Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and again on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on KATX and KWBY as Angela Robinson joins Stace Gaddy to share important financial information to help you live life on purpose. Insurance, investments, estate and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Always a pleasure to have Angela Robinson and the great folks at Kennedy Financial Services here in Eastland on the program. This is Life Planning 101. I'm Stace Gaddy. Angela, good morning. Looking forward to another great show.
Good morning, Stace. Happy to be on the show this morning. I read an article earlier in the month, and it was talking about how each of the candidates would propose taxes in the future. And so You're lucky. I've been over here. You can ask Stace. I've been over here diligently trying to get a hold of this article before the show because I do want to share this with you. And we're going to do that during the second part of the show. So you don't want to miss that. It's going to be really good because I know what is, if you're listening on Monday, now, granted, this re-airs on Saturday, but if you're listening on Monday, tomorrow is Super Tuesday. It is voting day. So this is some great information for you to have at your fingertips before you go to those polls and cast your ballot. But we are going to be talking about taxes today. And, I think every one of us as Americans has a duty to pay our taxes. I don't disagree with that at all. We live in the greatest nation in the world. I was just talking with my brother last night of how blessed we are. That
yes.
what we worry about is what type of food do we want for dinner, not are we going to have dinner, right? And we have a roof over our head every night, and we're born in this country with the ability to be president of the United States, if that's what we want to do, right?
Amen.
We have the freedom to do what we want to do. So I want everybody to get me real clear that I believe that all of us should pay our taxes. But I do think that there is a duty to pay taxes, and then there's an ability to pay way too much in taxes, okay?
Yes.
And, the funny thing is that, I actually had someone say to me one time it is my duty. I am an American. I want to pay my taxes. I said, great. I said, then why does Uncle Sam give you all of these incentives to not pay taxes? And why are you not taking advantage of them? And the truth is Uncle Sam would actually rather you save for your own retirement than pay taxes. Because if you don't save for your own retirement, what is Uncle Sam going to have to do?
He's going to have to pay you.
Pay for your retirement, right? So, when it comes to promote domestic business, education, nonprofit support, retirement funding, all those types of things. The government gives you incentive to give to those types of things or fund those types of things for your own future or for the causes around us. So it does mean you have a choice. Yeah, taxes are voluntary. You heard me. Taxes are voluntary. The key is, and we're going to talk about this on the show today, is to know your options. Number one, you have to know what's available out there or what's not available to you, right? Number two, to plan ahead. I love this call that I get around this time of year because everybody's thinking about their taxes. And
Panic.
And I get a call. What can I do for 2015? Well, not much.
Not a lot.
Not much. We're very limited at this point. So, and I want to remind people that, the clock is ticking every day. And when we do tax planning, we don't just talk about this year. We don't just talk about 2016. We talk about 2017, 2018. We talk about your estate. We talk about all kinds of tax planning because the more you're able to plan ahead, the less taxes you're going to pay. You heard me say that right. The more you plan ahead, the less taxes you're going to pay.
Pay attention, folks.
Yeah, worth it, right? And,
yes.
A lot of people think, okay, well, I don't have the time to do it. Okay, why don't you have the time? Well, I got to work. Great. So what if you had to work one less week because you paid that much less in taxes?
Talk about incentive.
Yeah, right? Okay, so, we kind of get this mindset wrapped around that maybe that doesn't work. But actually, if we think about it, it is money. And what do we need? What are we so busy doing all the time is earning money, right? And then when we get through knowing your options and we talk about planning ahead, the third thing that we're going to talk about is taking action. And I'm going to give you some really good stuff at the end of the show. We're going to talk a lot about business owners, about how they can save taxes. There are some really unique techniques that we're going to mention, and there's 5 starting points that I'm actually going to hand free to you on the show today of what you need to do to think about your tax planning. Okay.
I like the sound of that.
Yes. So this is going to be a great show. Okay. If you haven't noticed already. And I know taxes are on everybody's mind right now because here we are approaching that beautiful deadline in April where we have to file those taxes, and some of us may have to pay in extra taxes, right? So, that's really what we want to talk about is, while it's fresh on your mind, while the pain is still there, right? We're still there with the pain. We need to think about the future.
Feel it.
That's exactly right. And I'm going to kind of pick on our audience until April, because I think this is really important. I think people should be doing their tax planning. And by the way, because of that, we're going to be doing some giveaways today. I want you to listen closely. Our trivia is going to get a free tax analysis done.
Nice.
Yes, and we're gonna give that away. And then also the best question of the week. Now, I do want to know this gets really tricky. So submit your good questions because we're only picking one, and they also get a free tax analysis. And we're just doing this because we know how painful it is to write Uncle Sam those checks, and we want you to be able to write as little check as possible as well. When we come back, you don't want to miss. We're going to talk about those political leaders and who's on the ballot tomorrow and what their tax reform is going to be like.
More right after this. Life Planning 101. Welcome back, my friends, to Life Planning 101. Special thanks to all of our sponsors. I'm Stace Gaddy, our special guest and expert, Angela Robinson, as always in the studio. Good morning again. Talking about, are we giving our money away today?
That's right. And we've been talking about taxes, and we're going to go over, what you need to do. First of all, knowing your options, planning ahead, and then last but not least, taking action. And we're going to give some great starting points. We're going to give 5 away today. Some different things that you can actually do with your taxes to help you out. So I definitely want you to listen in on the show. But as I promised, there was an article in Investment News on February 1st, 2016. And it was how the 2016 presidential candidates stack up with advisors.
Okay.
And since advisors are all about money, right? Then this is really good to hear. And I think especially since we're talking about taxes, I'm going to share what they said on each of the candidates that are kind of primary for tomorrow on their taxes. So let's start with Mr. Trump. He would actually reduce the current 7 tax brackets to 4, 0, 10%, 20%, 25%. Single people earning less than $25,000 and couples making less than $50,000 would actually pay no income taxes.
Okay.
Wow, huh?
Yeah.
Business taxes would be capped at 15% of their income, and he'd eliminate the estate tax. And he would pay for the plan by reducing or eliminating most deductions and loopholes available to the very rich. So that's Mr. Trump's. And I thought this would be fun, so I'm going to put in here what the advisors' quotes are on why they like each of these candidates. The Trump supporters say he's tough, a good businessman, and not a politician. He needs a solid vice president to help him handle his mouth, and he'll be all right. Okay, so Hillary Clinton. Let's go to Hillary. All right, Mrs. Clinton would propose a 2-tier capital gains tax with 6 different levels that she says will promote long-term investment. She also has called for a 4% surcharge on people making more than 5% or $5 million annually. And she sounds like if she gets elected, she's going to keep me in a job. So her supporters say she's rational, believes in science, and has a thorough command of the major issues and extensive international experience. Okay, so let's go to Mr. Marco Rubio. Mr. Rubio would reduce the tax brackets from 7 to 3 tax brackets, 15%, 25%, and 35%. He'd eliminate all the itemized deductions while maintaining tax breaks for charitable contributions and mortgage interest. And he would replace the standard deduction with the refundable personal tax credit. Business taxes would drop from 35% to 25%, and he would eliminate capital gains and dividend and estate taxes. Wow. So his supporters say, I like the life story, his potential ability to unite across racial lines, and his conservative governing philosophies.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Cruz. Mr. Cruz is promoting a flat tax that could be filled out on a postcard. He would pare the current 7 tax rates down to 1, a 10% tax rate that begins after the first $36,000 of income for a family of 4. And he would eliminate estate and alternative minimum taxes as well as payroll taxes. And he would impose a 16% business flat tax on revenues minus expenses. He also plans to abolish the IRS. Wow. Opponents say Mr. Cruz is essentially backing a value-added tax. His supporters say he stands for conservative values, believes in capitalism, has strong Christian values, and will enforce the Constitution. Okay, Mr. Kasich. Mr. Kasich, like several other candidates, would reduce the current 7 tax brackets to 3. The top tax rate would be 28% in his case.
Okay.
He would reduce the long-term capital gains rate to 15% and eliminate estate taxes while cutting the corporate tax rate down to 25% from 35%. His supporters say most reasonable of the bunch, fiscally conservative and socially liberal. Bernie Sanders. Let's go to Mr. Sanders. I think he's our last one here. He promotes a progressive estate tax on Americans who inherit more than $3.5 million and would levy a financial transactions tax on the high-frequency trading entitlements. Mr. Sanders would lift the cap on the payroll taxes that fund Social Security. That means where it caps out at over, $116,000, you pay it on unlimited income now, making those who are more than $250,000 a year pay the same percentage as those on a low pay scale. His supporters say he would work to rebuild the middle class, which is the fuel for the economic engine in this country. So that's a lot of information, but
That's a lot.
It's good to have before we go to the polls tomorrow.
That's excellent, actually.
Yeah.
Just all of them side by side, what their tax plan is.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know exactly what they're looking to do. And trust me, it was a big piece of my decision too. You know, we work with taxes. We work with these families that have difficult, these middle class families that have a difficulty, paying their taxes, saving for retirement, and being able to help their children in the way that they need to be able to help. And so that's really, really important, right now. I think this might be the most important election in our lifetime for that. So get out there and vote tomorrow.
Sure may be.
Get out there and vote.
And we didn't mention Mr. Carson, but not out of disrespect, but just because he's just so far down in the numbers.
Right. That's right. Exactly right. He's believed if he didn't, tomorrow make a showing that he'll probably end up dropping out of the race. So where Mr. Kasich also has his own home state still there, which
still has Ohio in his pocket.
Yeah, and that's an all or nothing state, which could turn the tables for him. So a little bit different there. But let's go to your options, knowing your options. Now, on taxes, I would say knowing what's available is probably the most complex part of this whole process. And it is virtually impossible for an accountant, CPA, tax attorney, or any other person that calls them a tax professional to know all of your options. Is that crazy?
It is crazy, but it's understandable.
Yeah,
the paperwork is just
right. And
unbelievable.
The tax code is unbelievably difficult to understand. One anonymous high-priced tax attorney once stated, I love this, he said, "The best and finest tax planning is done by people who have more money than they'll ever spend or be able to give away. And the worst tax planning is done by nice middle-class people who have middle-class virtues, those who have to work hard, save, and sacrifice." Now, why do you think that is?
Well, one determines the other, I think.
Well, there is that. And there's the fact that people that are wealthy actually know they have to go hire someone as a quarterback to go out there and round up all these tax advisors and get them talking with each other. Where most of us go to our tax accountant and say, well, I've got this going. And then we may go to our financial advisor and we say, I've got this going. And we go to our tax attorney and say this. And we never let the three of them talk to come up with the best solution. And we never put all our cards out on the table.
We can't afford it.
We think we can't afford it. Guess what, Stace?
We can.
Yes. How can you not afford it? Again,
True.
Going back to that.
Are we giving our money away?
That's right. So, the concept of a life planning firm was built upon these types of issues. The fact that no one is putting it all together and there's holes and overlap in plans because of it. And, what we think and what we know to be true is that middle-class millionaire has every availability, like these ultra-wealthy, to be able to lower their taxes. And that's what we're going to talk about as soon as we come back.
Very good. You're listening to Life Planning 101 with Angela Robinson. Stay right there.
Hi, my name is Angela Robinson of Kennedy Financial Services. Our tagline has always been helping people live life on purpose. So what does that really mean? It means whether you're making a decision or avoid making a decision, you have made a decision. It is called living life by default. We have seen default decisions cost families millions of dollars and in some cases tear the family members apart. Join us on Mondays at 8:30 a.m. on KATX and Saturdays at 9 a.m. on either KATX or KWBY for a chance to learn about the most important decisions you will face regarding your future. Don't miss a chance to get your questions answered. Email us at lifeplanning@kennedy-financial.com and we will address them on our next program. And if you missed Life Planning 101 this week, you can still tune in online at katxradio.com. Don't miss this week because it possibly could be the one piece of advice that changes your life. Securities and investment advisory services offered through VSR Financial Services Incorporated, a registered investment advisor and member of FINRA SIPC. Kennedy Financial Services is not owned or controlled by VSR Financial Services Incorporated.
Welcome in, everyone, to our final segment this morning of Life Planning 101. Once again, here's our special guest and expert, Angela Robinson.
Okay, so we've been talking about taxes. Fun subject. And, Stacey, you brought up a good point in the break. You were talking about living in New York where you paid an income tax. And,
state tax, municipal tax.
That's right. And, we forget how blessed we are to be Texans. Just want to say that.
Yes.
God bless Texas.
Amen.
God bless Texas,
yes.
right? So, but let's get to it. Because I promised you good information here. We talk about knowing your options and how important that is. So how are you going to do that? Find you a quarterback that can help you work with different professionals because it is too important. It may be upfront money, but it will help you save your taxes. I promise you that. I was actually working with a client recently, and I told her, look, your tax planning is going to cost X dollars, but they plan on saving you X $1,000.
Yeah.
And, and that's a big difference. So you got to think about what is this really worth? And, at least get a consultation. That doesn't cost you anything, right? Mm-hmm. To go out there and seek advice and see if it's worth it. So we talked about knowing your options, planning ahead. You can't wait till the last minute. Right now we're planning for 2016, 17, and 18 and people's estates, the individuals and families we work with. So you have to plan for everything. I'm telling you, every tick of the clock is less time to be able to pay less taxes. Things disappear throughout the year. Did you know that?
They disappear?
They disappear. Where
do they go?
Yeah. So for 2016, the opportunities to lower your taxes actually disappear as the year winds down, not just after the year.
Sneaky.
Yeah. So you have to start now, okay? It's very, very important to go ahead and start planning now. Let's talk about the things you need to begin talking with your life planner or who is going to quarterback your team right now. First and foremost, and I encourage you to write these down unless you're driving, okay? That is my disclosure.
Right.
All right. What will be my tax liability for each of the next 3 years? What will my estate tax liability be? Okay. If you don't know the answers to that, you need to know the answers to that. Because it's so important. If you're able to pay less taxes one year to be able to pay something the next year, or what if you're going to have more income in 1 year? Should you pay to even it out? You actually think, well, I'm going to get all I can get right now. Well, if you do that, you may end up paying more tax down the road. So knowing what that income is going to be for the next 3 years is really, really important. And I understand there's sometimes you don't know to a T, but we all have a decent idea of how things can look, okay?
Yes.
And monitoring the progress of that is important. Number 2, I would rather give my money to a favorite nonprofit than Uncle Sam. I don't know about you, but that's how I feel. Okay?
Amen.
So how can I do this? All right. Well, the good news is there's several ways you can do this. In fact, if you are an IRA owner and you send money directly from your IRA to a nonprofit, it doesn't even show up on your tax return. Isn't that incredible?
And
okay, so
free advice, folks.
Yeah, so great things you can do around that. I definitely, bring up your charitable gifting in your tax planning conversations. This is a mistake most people make. They say, well, it's a very private part of my life. Yes, it is a very private part of my life as well. But if you fail to be able to utilize all the tools that are out there for you, you could miss something really big. An example of this is, what if you just sent money to that charity rather than doing this strategy? Well, if you don't have the high enough itemized deductions, you don't get the deduction for doing that.
Right.
So that could be a big difference. Or what if also it causes your Social Security to be more taxable? That's crazy, right? So there's things to think about there. Talk about that.
Professionals in your position, strict confidentiality, too.
That's correct.
So, folks, come on.
Absolutely. And we always call it life planning for a reason.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, people don't give to pay less to Uncle Sam, okay? They give because that's what's in their hearts. And that's why we call it life planning, because it's all about what's in your heart first. So, number 3, are there investments that could actually help lower your tax burden? And this is really an interesting thing. So again, the government tries to stimulate domestic business. One of those examples is oil and gas. There's actually deductions that you could take for oil and gas investments. Did you know that?
I did not.
Yep. Or what about tax credits? We always hear about different real estate that they're wanting to make something in a historical marker, things like that. There's some tax credits that you can receive for that. And also there's conservation easements, where we're trying to preserve land for being able to make sure that it's never developed on, so we preserve the wildlife, and there's huge deductions in regard to that. So, I think there's different things you can definitely talk with your investment advisor about here. They're not for everybody, And they don't always work. That's what you got to know with your situation. So it's really intricate planning, but they could be very, very worthwhile.
Yes, ma'am.
And what about your retirement plan? Number 4, are you making the contributions that you need to be making for your tax situation? And here's a big gift for you. Did you know you can actually shelter up to $210,000 this year in a retirement plan?
No.
Yeah, that's a big number, isn't it?
That is a good number.
Yeah, that's a big number. So if you got a 401k, max it out. Find out what those numbers are for this year. Max it out. If you don't have a retirement plan, talk to someone about a retirement plan. It's really important, especially business owners. You can make these tailored to fit you. And then when you've maxed all that out, there's even more you can do. There's actually trusts that are set up that you can get a deduction today and then turn it into income for life down the road for you and your spouse or you and your child. Believe it or not,
Wow.
or children. You can actually insure against certain needs that you have. Take a deduction today and have a basket of money later to be able to retire on. Think about that.
Double wow.
Yeah. Okay. So you have all kinds of opportunities out there to be able to make, big contributions in different areas if you've got some cash to be able to do it. I'd recommend talking to someone. And one time I heard somebody say, they said, well, you're telling me that I can either pay my employees, benefit them, or I can pay Uncle Sam. So that what you're telling me? I said, yes.
Yes.
I said, yes, that's your option here. You can either pay your employees more, reward them, or you can pay Uncle Sam. Yes. All right.
Yeah.
So there's always more to the story. Get the rest of the story. And number 5, what special tax rules or tax credits are available this year for you to take advantage of? A lot of people are afraid of home office deductions and things like that, but you don't need to be if you're documenting things correctly and you have your ducks in order. And be careful about, I had a client one time, a rancher, tell me, I don't need to buy any more green paint, meaning John Deere, right? Because it just depreciates out there and I lose money on it, all right? So be careful about just going out there to spend money to get a deduction. There might be other ways for you to do it more efficiently. So let's get to our trivia real quick. All right. How much can you shelter up into a retirement plan this year? A, $24,000, B, $115,000, or C, $210,000. Life planning at Kennedy-financial.com. A free tax analysis to the first person that answers that question. Life planning at Kennedy-financial.com. And don't forget to submit your question this week. If it is the best question, it also qualifies for a free tax analysis. So that's 2 of them we're giving away. Don't miss it.
That's very generous.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I am a patriot, but I am also pro community. I want to make sure that we
keep your money.
Yeah, keep your money. I am a patriot, but I am keep your money. So, as much of it you can. We want to be able to help people. So, again, my name is Angela Robinson with Kennedy Financial Services here in the great city of Eastland in a great state of Texas. God bless you and go vote.
Thank you very, 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 very much, Angela Robinson, and everyone at Kennedy Financial Services. Folks, thank you for listening, and tune in again next time for more Life Planning 101.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and again on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on KATX and KWBY for more Life Planning 101.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through VSR Financial Services Incorporated, a registered investment advisor and member of FINRA SIPC. Kennedy Financial Services is not owned or controlled by VSR Financial Services Incorporated.